You're holding your baby, perfectly still, and their eyes are locked, but not on you, not on the toy, not on anything you can find. They're just staring at nothing. You wonder if something is wrong. Maybe you even wave your hand in front of their face to get their attention, but if you do this, you've just interrupting something extraordinary. Here's the truth. Your baby isn't staring at nothing. They're staring at exactly what their brain is ready to see. And the world you live in is something completely different to them. Not blurry, not dark. Different in a way that is hard to imagine and genuinely fascinating once you understand it. Stay with me until the end, because the last thing I'm going to tell you completely changes how most parents respond when they see this stare. And that response, it turns out, matters more than most people realize. What their eyes can actually do right now. You've probably heard that newborns can't see very well. That part is true. But the reason why, and what that actually looks like from inside your baby's head, is one of the most interesting details in all of developmental science. At birth, your baby's visual acuity, their sharpness of focus, is somewhere around 20/400. That means what you can read on an eye chart from 400 feet away, they'd need to be standing 20 feet from. In practical terms, the world beyond about 8 to 12 inches begins to blur into softness. But here's the thing. Their eyes themselves work fine. The hardware is ready. What isn't ready is the software, the visual cortex, the part of your brain at the very back of your head that actually processes what your eyes are sending. At birth, that system is still weeks away from being fully online. So when your baby looks at you from close up and you're holding them exactly right, they can see you. Just not the way you think. They can see contrast, the edge of your hairline against your forehead, the dark line where your lips meet, the shadow under your chin. They're not seeing a face the way you see a face. They're seeing a high-contrast shape that their brand-new brain is quietly, urgently working to decode. That's not a limitation, that's engineering. That specific range, 8 to 12 inches, is almost exactly the distance from a nursing baby's face to the face of the person holding them. Their visual system didn't develop randomly, it developed for you. Why the world looks the way it looks to them, now. About that stare into nothing. Here is the part that genuinely surprised me when I first read the research. Your baby's visual system is not just limited in sharpness, it processes color differently. It processes depth differently. And most interestingly, it processes contrast in a way that makes certain parts of your environment almost invisible to them, and other parts almost magnetically compelling. Newborns in their first weeks are drawn with startling force to high-contrast edges. Black on white. Light on shadow. The border where two different things meet. Their visual cortex fires hard at these edges in a way it simply doesn't for gradual, soft transitions. Now look around the room you're in right now. Not at the things in it, at the edges. Where the ceiling meets the wall. Where the light fixture cuts against the ceiling, the frame around the door, the dark corner where two walls come together. That's what they're looking at, not nothing. The architecture of your room, the geometry of light and shadow, to your baby's freshly booting visual system, that's the most interesting thing in the space. That's not your baby zoning out. That's your baby's brain stress testing its own wiring. What that stare is actually building. Here's where it gets interesting, because that relentless staring is doing something specific and important inside the developing brain. Every time your baby fixes their gaze on a high-contrast edge, neurons in their visual cortex fire. And, in the developing brain, neurons that fire together wire together. That's not a metaphor. It's the actual mechanism. The technical term is synaptic pruning and reinforcement. The brain is building connections along paths that get used and trimming ones that don't. This means your baby is not passively waiting to see better. They are actively doing the work of building the visual system they'll use for the rest of their life. Every stare is a training session. Every fixed gaze is a set of reps. The brain does this in a very specific order, too. High contrast edges first, because those are the easiest signals to process. Then faces, particularly the face of the primary caregiver. Then color, starting with red and yellow, the highest contrast colors against skin tone. Then depth and distance. Then fine detail. It's a curriculum, and your baby is right on schedule. The thing most parents get wrong. Most parents assume that when their baby stares into space, they're either drifting off or they're in some kind of unfocused newborn haze. The reality is the opposite. That locked, serious, wide-eyed stare is a state of high alert. Researchers call it quiet alertness. It's one of the 6 recognized infant behavioral states, and it's the state where learning is happening fastest. Heart rate is steady, breathing is calm, body is still. Every bit of available processing power is being directed outward at whatever they're looking at. This is not a blank state. It is your baby at their most cognitively engaged. And here's the anxiety-adjacent part I promised you earlier. When you wave your hand in front of their face to break the stare, when you jingle something to redirect their gaze, or bring your face in close because you want eye contact, you are interrupting the one state in your newborn's day when their brain is running at full capacity. That doesn't mean you've damaged anything. It means you can let it happen. The next time you see that 1,000-yard stare, leave it. Sit quietly with them while they do their work. You don't need to be their entertainment in that moment. You just need to not be their interruption. That's not aloofness on their part. That's focus. What to do and what it means for you. Here's the practical thing. Now that you understand what your baby's visual system is drawn to, you can use it deliberately and gently. High contrast isn't just what their brain defaults to, it's actually what you can offer them when you want engagement. Black and white patterns. Your face in good light against a plain background. The contrasting stripes of a burp cloth held up close. And the distance matters more than most people realize. 8 to 12 inches. That's the zone. Beyond that, things begin to blur. Inside that zone, you are the most interesting thing in their world. Not because you're doing anything special, because your face, at that distance, with that contrast, is precisely the stimulus their visual cortex was shaped to respond to. There's a reason babies look at their caregivers' faces so often, so early, and so intently. Every time they do, they are activating the same neural systems that will later let them read your expressions, understand your emotions, and eventually mirror your reactions back to you. That face staring isn't just sweet. It is literally the foundation of their social brain being laid down, one gaze at a time. You were never just something to look at. You were always the curriculum. So tonight, when you see that stare into nothing, you're not watching a baby zone out. You're watching a nervous system come online. You're watching a visual cortex build itself edge by edge, shadow by shadow, in real time. You're watching a brain run through its first curriculum, and doing it exactly right, exactly on schedule, in exactly the way it was shaped to. And when those eyes do find your face, when they lock onto you with that seriousness, you're watching something even older than language try to learn what love looks like. If this gave you a new way to see your baby, share it with a parent who needed to hear it. And if you want to understand more of what your baby is already doing, subscribe to the channel.